Thought you were brothers.
We've been mistaken for that.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, that's a good welcome in. We're on.
Are we in?
That's it.
Hey, world.
Hey, world. How
Hello,
are you?
everybody?
How are we? Oh, are we super excited to be here? This is
so excited.
So excited. How are you guys?
Great, mate.
Can they see you as well? Are you just behind the screens?
I'm just going to be playing around with this little funky machine
so
here. Fancy here.
So, guys, that's my mate Liam, and we're in Liam's.
What would you say? I want to make this is more video for me. I like the video. We were talking about this before. Video is the thing that I want to be getting at. So, would you say video production studio?
Still a studio.
Still a studio.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is the guy I call Good Robin. He's in my phone as Good Robin. I have a bad Robin as well.
Oh, bad influence?
No, he's the good influence.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that later. So just to anyone who knows me, this is Liam, this is Robin.
Hey guys.
And I'm Stacey. So we're here on a fresh sunny Sunday morning. Actually, it's just starting to rain. We're checking out this amazing studio that Liam's got set up here.
Thank you, boys. I just wanted to bring you guys in because you guys are brothers of mine. Rob, big mentor of mine. You brought me through this. The amount of times actually both of you guys have just me wanting to step back and not do these agreements, not go through the process. We're going to talk about that as well. And then for some reason you have a conversation with me. That's not like a older brother conversation. Like you should be doing this. You got to be doing this. It's like I find myself gravitating back to doing not the right thing, but doing my life better. So that's why I want to bring you both in. That's why I didn't really actively coordinate you two saying that me saying that we're actually going to bring Robin in today and Stacey in today. One, because Rob's having a baby, so thank you so much for coming in. But two, I just wanted to see how we could bring everyone together. So I'm super excited.
Very good.
I went on a little bit of a tangent then, didn't I?
That's good. It's funny what you talk about there. I think it has to do with maybe it's talking a bit ad lib, and I like this idea of okay, so you called me out of the blue the other day. I haven't spoken to you for a long time. I think that's what you're referring to. And what I find interesting is I immediately want to tap into that high standard space. You know, that idea of being the better version of myself. And I think that's what you're referring to. That's what I've experienced as well. Is that we've gone on a journey, and we've got mutual friends, who've obviously gone on a similar journey. And that journey is about operating at a higher level of consciousness and acting from a perspective of what's best for me in terms of how I feel good. And I think every time I connect with you or Stacey or any of our friends, it taps into that straight away. It's like a muscle memory.
Yeah,
absolutely. I really resonate with that. What you're saying, as you were saying it, I was like, yeah, you're totally right. Like when I'm dealing in any way with somebody from our common space, yeah, my standards are as good as I can get them, which is amazing.
And so, what happens when we're away, though? Is it the more that you notice that you're, like talking about from your perspective, do you notice that your standards drop, and is that the difference, or do you find that you're...
Yeah, and I think, yes, and I think it's important to just make a point that it's not like it drops to a really radical kind of extreme perspective. It's just small, subtle things, you know, like I don't pay as much attention, I'm not as present in my life, or I'm sloppy with my language, or I'm lazy with my training, or whatever, you know, and there's such small, subtle things. What's interesting is when I reconnect with yourself and Stacey and friends and mutual friends, or reconnect with information. It can come from different sources, and that muscle memory kicks in. I just tune in again to doing the things that actually I feel better for. And it's like that constant fight against the lazy version of myself, or the path of least resistance. You know, it seems like the more I've been reminded in those moments to go, that's right, actually I prefer it here. I don't think it's major drops or major, you know, extremes.
Yeah, okay. Interesting.
We can hear your bullshit, and you know we can hear your bullshit. So there's no space for it here. Whereas in other environments, you can say stuff that you don't really mean. You can get away with not being, you know, as best as you can be. But I think the relationship that we have is one of accountability and one of, the impeccable standard. I know what you're capable of. I know what you're capable of. And so when you're in my presence, we were on time today.
Yeah.
that way. Well,
Yeah, it was amazing. The three of us just turned up
Turned
right
up.
at a point in
Right.
time. Yeah.
I was actually up here at like 2 minutes to, and I'm like, oh god, it's 2 minutes to. I'm
Yeah.
right downstairs.
Yeah. I was in the
Like,
basement
lift,
at
hurry
2
up.
minutes too. I was at the door at exactly 10, but yeah. I was like, where?
Yeah.
It's
No,
so
it's
clean. It's clean to live that way. That's the thing, isn't it? You know, the subtlest thing about being on time, which we learned and we got taught to think of it that way, of being on time and making that important, is it's clean. It's like
So
I have
much easier.
less conversation in my head around being late. What's the
Mm.
story I'm going to tell? You know, like. The ramifications as a result of being late, you know, and it's interesting to be in a world where, you know, what's fascinating is I keep a watch with the minute hand, and I particularly love following seconds as well to get this perspective accuracy on time.
Mm.
And what's interesting is the front of the phone never shows the seconds.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like it's already informing us, so we don't need to worry about the seconds now because we don't need that accuracy
Interesting.
time anymore.
Interesting.
And it's funny because actually that's what I thrived in, was getting to a place where we've developed an accurate measurement of time, regardless of whether people agree with it or not. That is what we've chosen.
Mm.
Why not adhere to it exactly?
Yeah.
And then discover how awesome it is to be within that finite space.
Mm.
When so much of my life is so grey and airy-fairy and fluffy,
Mm.
there's a great tool for precision.
Yeah.
And yet our phones are dropping the seconds part.
Yeah. That's interesting. It brought up that popcorn moment for me just then of why we actually turn up on time, like just being clean and having that story to tell if you are
Yeah.
late.
Mate,
And I just feel like, oh my god, that's why I do it.
yeah, totally.
Like, I mean, I'm thinking that because I've been out of the space for a while, and I'm thinking, why am I always on time? Like, is it an anal thing now, but it's actually that to keep clean.
I think
the same thing.
I think it's okay to forget too, and I think it's okay that it's a habit. You know, like that's the thing we work on. Because the other thing is, it's not very well supported necessarily as an agreement out there.
Mm.
So you know, I have to. Well, it's like if I do it independently of my own choice, and I keep practicing it, you know, the journey's there for me to discover. People aren't necessarily reflecting on it and talking about it themselves, or may not even be aware of it. You know, for instance, I'll turn up to a meeting and I will be the first person there, and people meander in 5 minutes later, 10 minutes late. I don't necessarily judge them for that. It's not really important to me. Could be irritating if, for instance, it's important to get on.
Mm.
And I just do it for myself. And I think it's okay that we don't know why, or you do get lost in the sense of, is this a weird habit that I've got? I think that's okay as well. Like, because then I can cycle back and be reminded on like a day like today, for instance.
And it's the same thing with actually cleaning as well. I'm the same way. Like, I always have to feel as though I have to keep things clean, like at home, in my car.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like in my mindset, I feel like I'm a lot cleaner when everything else is clean. So just interesting to look at.
We should talk about agreements, because I feel like we've touched on the subject already.
Well, that's what we're leading
That
into.
is, it's the perfect thing. So I just want to pick up on that thing about being late, right? Being on time. And I was imagining my journey on the way down here, knowing that I was coming to spend time with you, and that this was an important meeting for me, and so on. If I was running late, I know this from my own experience, and I know other people can relate to this. When I was before I started being on time, I used to spend the journey to work, when those days when I had a job, thinking, oh, that red car. Oh, I nearly had an accident with that red car. That'll be the story that I tell.
Mm.
Oh no, it's a flat tire. And I spend my entire journey to work thinking and observing excuses that I can feed to my boss when I'm late. Whereas now, like, I knew I was on time this morning when I left, and I knew I had enough time to be here, which meant my mind was free to contemplate, what am I going to hang out with Liam? What are we going to talk about today?
Mm.
And so that I had that processing time as opposed to that bullshitting time.
Mm.
And that minor thing multiplied across somebody's life is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It makes a massive
You
difference.
touch on a really key point there, the multiplier. So
enormous.
because when I compartmentalize my life is to separate events and don't see the connection, actually the agreement there of being on time, taking away that conversation, I quickly reinforce a value and an experience that's really important to me, that then I apply in another instance. And that, I think it's really important to be observant and aware of that, because actually that little exercise of being on time does play out somewhere down the track. I can make those connections. I can connect the dots if I practice it long enough and see that. But a lot of people who maybe are starting out don't recognise that that's why those little agreements are important.
RAM. It's my processing time. If my brain is free and not worrying about being late, then my computer is doing good stuff. And most of my inspired ideas, not most, but a lot, come while I'm enjoying my motorbike ride. You know, and that's that free time where that super processor that we all have is either thinking, oh, what story am I going to tell because I'm late? Or some other drama that usually comes from lack of integrity or lack of agreements. Almost all of it is interpersonal stuff when it comes down to it. It's a lot of it's integrity and agreements and so on. And so freeing that up by just doing what you say you're going to do, the multiplier, we're talking 10,000 hours of beneficial time. And we'll get back to that later.
Yeah.
So look, let's talk about agreements because it is one of the core things we have in common.
Where I feel like I miss with the agreement side of things is how long do I do an agreement for? Until it serves me. Like, for example, I have an online coaching group that I do with a few guys to help them out with strength and conditioning. And I made them all set a daily agreement. And I've set a daily agreement for the next 30 days to instill that habit. Mine's stretching. So what happens after that agreement after 30 days? That's where I'm coming up to now because it's coming up to the end of May. So what do I do now? Do I pick a new agreement? Do I continue to do that?
Could I recommend we go back even a little bit, a step further back and look at what an agreement is and what it means to you?
Yeah, okay.
Because, for instance, I would imagine like keeping an agreement for a period of time can only have so much value if I don't understand the purpose behind it or the intent behind it. And I have a perspective on it that's not necessarily related to the activity of the habit, you know, like whatever that agreement is. I think there's a bigger intent behind keeping an agreement and what it's meant. So do you agree with that? Should we just look at what an agreement means?
Yeah, I also think it's important that people understand that you were running an agreement group on an everyday basis for how many years?
4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years of integrity-based agreement facilitation. That, by the way, is an extremely big deal. And Liam was in that space, and Liam's been a coach for coaches where agreements is a huge part of it. I have been a student of Robin's and part of that community for many years, maybe 10 years, and it has become one of the most important things in my life. I actually facilitate it's called 7-Day Agreements. It's an online meeting every Tuesday night. So it's something that's so important to me that I still run it in my life, and I know that you guys, we embody this, and I think it's something that we do have something to say. You know, we're not just some dudes talking about agreements. I know from my experience that you guys actually really do this stuff and understand it far more than the average person. I did say. So yes, define agreements if you'd like to do that.
Well, I'll kick us off anyway because I think everyone should share their perspective. So we maybe just to give you a perspective, we met through a workshop called the Waking Up Weekend, and that was where I was first introduced to the idea of keeping an agreement. Without delving into what Waking Up Weekend is, I think we'll carry on with just talking about agreements for now. So the agreement, it was a task given to me to look at keeping my word, but honouring my own internal word. And the word was, okay, for instance, it could be anything. So it might be like, I'm going to quit alcohol for 7 days or 10 days. Or I'm going to exercise for 10 minutes a day. And at first, like the first thing that comes up for me with the idea of the agreement is that I want to achieve something. Like it's an achievement-based thing that I've been missing in my life. So that's the first thing that I discovered or practiced or looked at with respect to keeping an agreement. So actually, the first thing that comes up is, well, I'm so pumped, I'm so fired up, from having looked at my life in a certain way from this weekend that I did. I'm going to do 30 minutes of exercise. So immediately I'm like, I can do this.
Hero.
But the interesting thing is I haven't practiced keeping my agreement, so someone pulled me aside and said, that's lovely, and you could still do that. But maybe for the intents of keeping it, make it a smaller agreement. So what I discovered is the agreement is really about practicing something that is incredibly rare, I think, and rarely practiced, is this idea of honouring my word, which interestingly, if I don't do it internally with myself, how is it possible that I'm going to practice it out there in the world? So if I have an agreement with you to deliver something that I would say, yeah, I'll get this to you by Tuesday, that if I don't have a very good relationship with keeping my word and keeping my own internal agreements, the chances are I'm not going to keep that agreement. Or the only reason I'm making that agreement important is because in that moment I think that person's more important than, say, this person over here. And I didn't realise the ramifications that actually that first journey of keeping an agreement with myself is first of all, incredibly difficult, something I hadn't practiced in my life before. And secondly, plays a significant role, going back to something we discussed even earlier, in terms of like how it plays out in the bigger stage of how I do my life. So keeping an agreement is about beginning. It starts with, for me, beginning with honouring my word, my internal word.
Mm. That's it. I completely agree with that. That was how I was going to add into it. But I think what Louise said, the degree in which we honour our word is a degree in which we live our life.
Mm-hmm.
Is that coined by him, or
my life works to the degree to which I honour my word? It's most likely Toltec from Miguel Rules in Four Agreements, or at least it's an extractive of that book's philosophy.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah.
That always resonates with me when I stick with an agreement.
It's funny how we know that cliched saying, and anyone can share that, isn't it? But what does it actually mean?
Mm.
Well, I think there's the word is so important because we can say I'm going to do 10 push-ups a day, every day, and I'm going to do it. Now, then us guys, we know that we need to really look into how do you define a push-up, because that's a word, and we're using a word to explain something. And in my 7-day agreement stuff, we have people do that hero thing. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to lose 15 kilos in the next 7 days. It's like, yeah, great. And yes, you can do 5 hours of exercise a day if that's what you want. But everyone here in the group is going to limit you to saying you're going to do maybe 1 minute or 5 minutes. If you have an amazing day and you want to go do extra, that's fine. But really getting into those sentences. So when it comes to keeping my word and integrity, which is the backbone of agreements, I guess, hearing myself, hearing the dialogue between the one who said he's going to do it and the one who is making up excuses, that is, for me, being on time, the brand, my own personal brand of doing something that I say I'm going to do, all those magnificent consequences, they're all lovely. But for me, learning when I say I'm going to do it, and then it's 11:59, and what comes up in my head, and I haven't done it yet, how does that conversation play out in my life? And I think just by making agreements, understanding that that's the study we're doing, we're not trying to get six-pack abs. We're not trying to actually quit alcohol. What we're trying to learn is what's going on between the good guy and the bad guy that we all have to deal with. And most people don't, and when I say most, I mean, I think probably more than half the population don't actually even they don't have that conversation with people. They don't acknowledge that there's this internal dialogue.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because one of the things is if I build trust through the process of honouring a single agreement, for instance, and let's say I keep that agreement for 7 days, and I got to a place of recognising what a single push-up is for me, because that's the beauty of it is who holds me accountable, right? So that's a really interesting thing, is that actually the practice is about holding myself accountable. We actually developed support in that space really effectively, and that was definitely a really powerful tool. And it's still about observing what does a push-up mean to me, for the example of push-up, right? What does it actually mean? Because I can do 10 push-ups and I can say I've done 10 push-ups.
You can do it against the wall.
Yeah. But actually I've got to define what that is for me. And then if I honour it, if I follow it through, how good do I get to feel? Except that there's no one to share that with necessarily. It's just my agreement with myself. And that is probably the most powerful realisation. That's where I think I build trust in terms of my internal dialogue, where that simple exercise will play out in a way where I'm confronted with a situation, and I really want to handle that situation with the more courageous version of myself. And actually, if I don't trust myself, I'll quit and whimper out of that situation. But if I build trust with my internal word, I'll take a chance in that moment to do something, and I'll say something for that incident in that moment. And even if it's ugly or it doesn't resolve itself very well, I can walk away going, I'm proud that I handled that. I'm proud that I listened to that voice and honoured that voice. And the only way, that's just my personal experience, the only way that I feel that I got to that place was I learned to develop trust for my internal word, because I started to engage with that person who wants the higher standard, not the easy way out. And there are several voices in there that are always telling me to quit on something or do this or do that. And to be in honour with that one voice who goes, no, you made an agreement here. That's what builds the trust to then be bigger than myself in certain circumstances. And again, I'm talking about small stuff. I'm not talking about big picture.
Yeah. And what about doing the agreement? Do you find sometimes that you just don't want to do it? You're like, oh, I can't be arsed right now. It is 11:58, but I've got to do 10 push-ups in the next 2 minutes. I just can't be fucking bothered. but you do it anyway. Do you find that you gain that sense of confidence, trust,
Yeah, look,
those things as well because you've done it and you've honored your word, or what do you think on that?
Definitely.
And is it okay to not want to do it but still do it anyway?
Well, anything up till that moment is inside your comfort zone. Anything outside of that is outside your comfort zone. So it depends. Do you want to just stay the same?
Yeah.
Because, I think anyone doing some kind of personal development is hoping to have a better life. And actually what they really want through an agreements process is to discover that boundary that you're referring to, and then to know that, well, see, here's the interesting thing. If the agreement's with myself, then I have to push myself through that boundary. And that's tough. That's advanced, a lot of the time. Or there needs to be some other capital gain type thing to the agreement. For example, if the agreement is to call a client, then it's going to be the desire for the money or the business growth or something like that that's going to get me across. But if it's just one push-up, nothing's going to happen. And if there isn't an accountability team, if you don't have to look someone in the eye the next day and be like, you know what, I did do it, or I didn't do it, then that's that thing that's all about that comfort zone. It's a really interesting, it's the most exciting place.
Yeah.
It is, and to add to that as well is that, okay, it's 11:58, and then I make the decision to do it.
And that means getting out of bed and everything, right?
It's like, how much better do I feel? And then I can go through 3 days where I don't feel like doing it, and then on the 4th day, I'm back into the mood of feeling like doing it again, and I can look back at myself, hey, I did it through that period where I didn't want to do it. So now it's like I've developed a consistency in my life that otherwise I didn't have, because I just would choose at whim when I wanted to do something.
So Liam, at the beginning, you mentioned the 30-day thing that you've come up against. Yeah. And what happens at the end, and how do you transition from one agreement to the next?
Yeah.
What I find is that depending on the person's growth, so it's a case-by-case situation. If that person has chosen a good agreement that you agree with, that they agree has been good for them, and if it's become natural, then they can maybe evolve and choose something else. If not, then sticking to that same agreement I know you already understand, that's one option. But then to layer it, to put something else on top that's complementary to the previous agreement. Sometimes you do that with the 7-day stuff. People will be like, I want to meditate for 10 minutes every day. They've already been doing it for 5 days of the week, but now they want to make it 7. So after 7 days, if they've done 7, it's almost already at a point. I would suggest probably another round of 7 and 14. Do you guys know where the idea of it takes 21 days to create a habit? Do you know where that came from?
No.
It's really interesting. When the NASA guys were testing humans to see how long it was going to take for them to be able to assimilate into the space environment, to live on the spaceships and stuff, they were doing all these sorts of tests, and they put inverter glasses on the astronauts when they were on Earth. And so basically their entire world was flipped. So up meant down, and they had to reprogram their hand to be able to, pick the glass up off the table, so to speak, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and that was 21 days. And we base it all on this 21 days, but I think it can take 3 months. We've experienced that it can take 3 months. My first agreement, I'd be interesting to know what your favorite agreements were. My first agreement, and probably my most favorite that gave me the most profound results, was as simple as making my own bed.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is that it was in my private world. It wasn't one of those ones where I was getting a 6-pack or I was doing a Facebook post every day or something like that. It was my own bed. And so every time in the morning, my agreement was to make the bed in the morning. And so I had to make the bed. Even if I was going to wash the sheets later at night, I still made the bed every day. And so what that meant was when I got home from work, I walked in to find evidence that Stacey loves me. The old Stacey is working for the future Stacey. And the compound effect of doing that for 3 months, it changed my entire life. I tripled my income. I started a business. I bought a house. I just rocketed through. And it was because I showed, not only was I keeping my word with myself, totally just for me, but also I was loving the future me. And that's something I never used to do.
That's interesting. I never even thought about that.
Yeah, I want to touch on that because I think that is interesting, because I don't know about you guys. I noticed that a morning version of myself is a different set of people inside my head than an evening version. And what's fascinating about keeping that agreement, and the way you shared that, I hadn't heard that before, is so beautiful, because actually, if the greatest level of honesty I can be is that, well, I walk into that door, that's a different Robin who started the day. And you're right, I look at that and go, oh, he loves me.
Mm.
You know, like that's a really fascinating insight. I had the same experience making the bed. I think it's really one of the more unique ones because it's the first thing in the morning I can do, or one of them. And it's the level of detail I go to making my bed. So I got to a place of like, no, I don't think that's good enough. No, I think I need to make that again because I'm not quite happy I could leave the day looking like that. And then it really does seem to play out how I do my day.
Yeah. How about you?
What my favourite?
Yeah, you didn't actually share what was your favourite one, but was yours?
Funny enough, it was. It was making the bed, yeah.
I don't remember what my favourite one. I think I've done a few. Like I've done random ones, ones that didn't serve me that well. I feel fine, and other ones like eating vegetables every day. I think I chose that. I don't know why I chose that one. Or 5 minutes of yoga a day. I think that was a good place. Or actually, come to think about it, the meditation one. I think that was coming into that first world record that I did. I did that 5 minutes meditation every day. And I don't know where I got it from. Maybe yourself or one of the other people at the waking up weekend experience. That 5 minutes, it takes about 10 minutes before I actually start to really let go. So I increased it after about 10 days to 20 minutes a day. And I kept with that for the next, I think it was 2 months, 2.5 months. And I just felt clear. Everything just seemed clear. And that internal dialogue of going back and forth, the internal chatter just seemed to diminish throughout the day. So I think that's probably my favourite one.
That's interesting. I was thinking maybe to add a bit of flavour is flossing my teeth. I did that agreement. And that's a unique one because it's so simple. And how many days I forgot to do it? It reminded me that the agreement is about the agreement. That's what's so curious is because listening to meditation, like for instance, if I was listening into this conversation, viewing at home, what have you, you know, it might be too easy for me to go, I prefer the meditation agreement. I think that's great because that's right where my alignment is. Well, you know, do the flossing the teeth one because that's where the lesson is. Do I remember it? Like it's so simple a task. It doesn't require me to do push-ups. And the amount of times I'm like, jeepers, did I do it? I don't know. And that, in fact, is actually the exercise.
Yeah.
Did I remember to keep my agreement? And that's the beauty of it is because then there's this whole thing about agreements like beating myself up, being guilty, being shitty, wanting to turn it around and go, I don't need to do this anymore. This is a stupid idea. All that kind of dialogue comes up. So the ability to just let it go. You know, if I miss my agreement that day, let it go and just start again. It's fine. It's practice. You know, I'm going to do this. And it's a non-ego thing. The flossing the teeth because it's so obscure, so small a detail, and and because of that, I don't make it important. Well, what if that's in fact, how I operate? I don't make my word important. That's the kind of like, wow, magnifying in my life, magnify a glass in my life.
Yes, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Have you heard of that?
I know of it.
It's about the details. That's what he's talking about. You know, just check the oil, and your bike will just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, all right,
we've gone down the agreement path.
That's some good chat. Yeah, any little summaries there? Any nuggets?
Well,
Finish off agreements.
Plenty of nuggets.
I'd like to wrap it up, or wrap up my perspective on it, which is I think it's important to practice and be playful with the idea of honouring my word and not focus necessarily on the agreement for outcome. So like making my bed is a beautiful one because that actually is about this whatever is needed for that day, not progress towards something bigger. Now, meditating every day is a fantastic goal. Like doing 10 push-ups every day is very good. The outcome will be strength, and it's a very good goal-orientated agreement. Or practicing running for a marathon. These are very useful agreements, and they will serve their purpose, and they're totally appropriate. There is something special though about doing an agreement just for the sake of doing an agreement. That's all I wanted to share there.
Absolutely. If you don't have a community of people who you respect to a point where if you say you're going to do it, then you're going to do it, and I think that's really important to have that that level of respect. You know, that the relationship with the person you're making the agreement with has to be a very important relationship, such as a mentor or your kind uncle who supports you through things. Like the agreement's not going to be with somebody who you hang out with at the pub. And in fact, that's a really interesting point because there's a lot of people who do that. I'm not saying there's anything specific about being at the pub, but it's the kind of environment where they're like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And it means zero. No one at the table believes that it's going to happen. And the more if I was to be doing that constantly, then I'm saying zero. Like I have no intention of really doing it. And the more I practice that across a table with people who actually, they don't really care. They're not going to back up. They're not going to check up on me. And so the more I say those sorts of things flippantly, the weaker I'm making that time when I actually do need to do it. And if I make that statement again, it's been like the idea of what do they call it? New Year's Day agreements. What's it called?
New Year's
New Year's
resolution.
resolution. Yeah, very good.
Okay.
Like New Year's resolutions have just been I'm thinking of some inappropriate terms, but basically they're worth nothing.
Mm.
You know, they're worth nothing. So to have a New Year's resolution is more of a fun thing to say. But yeah, when it comes to agreements, so if you are interested, if anyone's interested, it's 7da.co. It's the smallest URL you've seen in a long time. 7da.co. So a 7-day agreements community. Check it out, and you can join in every Tuesday and start making some changes. Little nuggets from you.
Self-love, what you brought up, like having that element of making the bed in the morning, which would give me the opportunity for when I come in at night time, just like that previous, that past Liam. Yeah, thank you for that. That's it's loving myself in the future. It's setting things up in a way that how I want it to be in a positive way. So, and that's great for the daily agreement. That's my popcorn moment for sure, indeed.
Yeah, it's the same as recording the receipts at the end of each day. It's like if you run a business and you get home and you actually enter the receipts into your software or something, when it comes time to do something with it, it's like, oh, thank you, Stacey, that's great.
Yeah.
Good on you. That's
Thank
a
God.
nice
Instead of thank you for leaving it to the last day.
Shoebox.
Thank you for having a
shoebox.
shoebox.
Screw you, man.
Middle console in the car.
Oh, is that how it is? So that's a nice little rounded chat there, boys. Very good. And you were 10,000 hours.
No, I think it was.
What was your?
Well, my question was, like, do we need 10,000 hours to make sure that we can achieve that or be the best at it? That's what I want to work out. Is it 10,000? Like, I know science says that it's 10,000 hours, but
Well, it was actually a study. I think I read an article about it, and there are some really great examples about 10,000 hours. It seems to be the number in which, if someone tips over that point, then they tend towards mastery of something.
Yeah. So I think that for the mastery part is great, and where I love ISA and where we came from in terms of the wake up weekend experience, participation is one of the key elements to living that self-aware life, isn't it? So having that self-aware, having that element of participation, I find that knowing that if I want to master something, like let's pick the guitar, for example. I don't have 10,000 hours of guitar, but then I've like experience on guitar. Simultaneously, I love picking up the guitar. I'd love to go up on stage and play a song. So that's my version of mastery. That's what I'm saying. Like from that 10,000 hours perspective. And then in Bali last year, I actually got up on stage and sung a song with my guitar. So if I had that 10,000 hour rule, which is science based, I think we've still got to think about the opportunity of just the element of participation, like not being scared off by those amount of hours to make sure that we have that mastered.
So I would say,
like
just from telling your story there, you must be within your 10,000 hours of guitar practice.
Maybe,
like you're in the space of that.
Maybe, but like, what about the marathon? Like, I did a marathon. And I only did it in 27 days preparation. Like, I want to have that. Is there I'm just exploring the opportunity. Is there an element of practicing something and participating in something without the need to master it for? What's the word for that one?
Well, I think let me dissect a little bit of what you're sharing there. I think.
I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't want people to be scared off by the amount of hours that you have to do before you have to master something. Like before you have that goal in mind. Like, I have to get up on stage and do 10,000 hours worth of guitar before I get up on stage and sing a song with my guitar. Like, fuck it, just go and do it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Does that make sense?
Well, I'll give you an example. So one of the studies was about the Beatles, and what the part of the Beatles' success was they did over 10,000 hours of gigging. But so to your point, so there's, I think the word is that there's a degree of irony in what you're sharing there, because actually that participation, you getting up and playing guitar and what have you in Bali, getting out of your comfort zone and doing that, not having had 10,000 hours, is in fact you doing your 10,000 hours worth.
Ah, okay. Interesting.
Right, that's what that is. So like the Beatles, for instance, were famous for playing at a nightclub in Germany somewhere. I couldn't tell you what part of Germany it was. Whether it was Berlin or somewhere else. And they would just play consecutively night after night after night. And so what happened was they had to develop content. They had to develop songs. They had to write songs. So by the time they came back to England and developed huge popularity, they'd already had more than 10,000 hours, or less than 10,000 hours worth of not only playing together and that synergy that comes with playing together, they had content. They'd written so much songs so that when they got to the point of recording in the studio, they could essentially make decisions and operate at a space of intuition and speed and decision-making ability, because they'd done the dirty work, if you will. They'd done the work behind the closed doors that no one else was seeing. I mean, except for a nightclub in Germany. And I'm talking very generically about that. I'm sure that someone listening might have a better understanding of that story. I have to go back and read the article. So I think, in answer to your point, is that you've got to do. That's what you're talking about, is in fact the process of doing the hours.
Yeah, so it's not the doing the hours to build up to that end goal of getting on stage. It's actually getting on stage to build the 10,000 hours to master getting on stage. Is that right?
What I'm interested in is you're referring to 10,000 hours means that you are a master, or something like that. And then once you're a master, or once you've got 10,000 hours, what is it that happens after that? Like, what is it that you're wondering? I get the impression that you're wondering if you're allowed to be somebody yet, and if you need to do your 10,000 hours before you can be that person. Is that kind of where you're coming from?
Yeah, exactly right.
And who is it that you want to be that you don't believe you're allowed to be yet?
Oh no, just like because I had these goals that I've set in the past that I thought, personally, that I want to share with other guys, that just making sure that the element of participation is the key, rather than building up to the point where you have to continue to practice that one thing over and over again in order to master like the end goal, which is, I was just using that as an example, getting on stage.
Do you know what I think it is? What I think it is the 10,000 hours is someone trying to define a process that is very hard to define. I think so that's what they came up with. Is so it appears like you've got to do 10,000 hours or more, and they did it based on studying all these different elements, like these different groups, be it the Beatles, it could be sports stars, it could be, that took a slice of different people.
Martial artists.
Yeah, it could be. And so what they did was they came up with a value, and the value was 10,000 hours. Here's the problem with that information now, and I think it's kind of what Stacey's alluding to, the way it's like we as a society maybe are getting trapped now with this figure. Because that's what science has tried to do, is give us some sort of value that's associated with practice, when actually each one of those slices of stories would have had dynamically different process. So there could be instances out there where someone actually practices for 10,000 hours before they do that thing. And maybe for them that works. So but that can't apply to everyone. Maybe there's an instance where someone has to get up on stage in order to accelerate their growth, even though that's really difficult. And so the value of their hours of input are different to someone who practices 10,000 hours in the bedroom for
Exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, 10,000 hours of practice by yourself doesn't mean you can get up and be a rock star. No, not at all. Yeah. Absolutely, probably not.
Except there might be instances where it might. It's just unlikely.
Susan Boyle.
It's unlikely. Yeah, well,
Susan Boyle.
But I think it's important. See, what we're trying to do is then define what that process is. But actually, that study was looking to try and create some sort of single value or some kind of easy to pull out data to then present. Oh, that's what it needs to be. When actually, there's more to that study. There'll be motivation and inherent sense of want or desire from those people that you can't necessarily measure. Maybe their circumstances are driving them to this certain, and also they're on the pathway to mastery. So we deem them as masters. I think this is going back to something you said. They may not. They might say, no, I feel like I'm very much at the beginning of this journey. They might have an opinion about where they're at. I know that I'm pretty certain that George Harrison and John Lennon didn't necessarily like their voices when they were recording.
Oh, really?
Same with Jimi Hendrix. He couldn't stand himself, and yet, of course, one of the most beautiful things about listening to those guys is listening to their voices and the way they sing their songs.
Yeah, I just love. I love the element of participation and having that. I just use that example as the marathon. Like I couldn't run more than 5 kilometers, but then running that 42 kilometer in 27 days, like I got the opportunity, I'd done it, and for that, yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I think then you're touching on something which is the value within those hours.
Mm.
So suddenly, like anyone can do 10,000 hours, right? I can do 10,000 hours of watching TV, but it's the value I add within those hours. So what you've done is actually increased the value of that time by doing the exercise of, say, running a marathon.
Run a marathon, yeah.
So, like, I'll give you an anecdotal story. It's quite a fun story. So, a couple of years ago, I bought a drum kit. $100 off I made, wanted to learn the drums. A really good friend of mine's a bass player, a very good bass player. And he hears wind of it and he goes, great, I'll come around. So he comes around the day after. And I've got a bit of time on my hand during the day because I'm working in theatre at night. I'm doing sound for theatre shows at the Sydney Theatre Company. So he comes around and we start rehearsing. And I'm learning to separate the hands first. It's the hardest thing. It's just, it's quite difficult. I've never played the drums in my life. I'm just practicing. So we do it for a week and then it comes around to the following week and we're still going. So it's Monday a week later, and he goes, I've got us a gig this Sunday. I said, a gig?
A gig?
I said, mate, I can't play the drums. He goes, yeah, I've got us a gig. We've got 2 guitarists, we put it together, and so we played at the Lewisham pub on a Sunday, and I couldn't play for anything. There's one bloke sitting on the pokies, and the wife of the band who was there previously, and they, we got applause, and it scared the living daylights out of me. I was nervous as anything. But of course, what happened was I went away and went, right, I need to learn how to play live. So what was interesting is we did this for a year, where I'd rehearse for a week or 2 weeks, and he'd get us a gig. And every time I was nervous, and I'd say, Louis, this is crazy, I can't play. He goes, doesn't matter, you just got us up there. And these 2 guitarists were great. And we formed a band, and we were called the Virgin Thursdays. Louis Thorne and the Virgin Thursdays. We did about 6 or 7 pub gigs in a year, so maybe more actually. And we recorded an EP, and we've even made it to the Triple J Unearthed website.
No way.
Materials up there. Well, I'm not saying we were unearthed per se, but we're certainly up on the website, and we got a write-up in the local paper, and suddenly after a year I could say I genuinely played a drum, drums in a band. And I think this is your point.
That's my point,
right?
Yeah.
And what was interesting was, and I talk about this a lot, is that the playing informed me how to rehearse, because I had to learn very quickly how to sustain myself through a gig, because drumming is really difficult. And I wasn't, by the way, I'm not necessarily a great drummer. It's just that I learned to play effectively so the band could get on with actually playing good music. And it was that process. So that, to come right back around to your 10,000 hours, you're right. There is something about this participation that's important. And there is the fear in the moment of an audience and what that does to inform the next stage of training, or the fear of upset, failure, rejection, whatever it might be. To push through that, handle that in the moment, that really dictates what I do with myself in the next period. It makes me observant, alive, aware of what to take forward.
Do you think that then 10,000 hours would be, what you're practicing is 10,000 hours of participation and getting out of your comfort zone, not necessarily just the drumming?
Exactly what I was just going to say about you, dude. Every time I speak to you, you've done something outrageous.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
So you actually have practiced, and I don't know how to define what it is. Or I suppose you could say 10,000 hours of just being like, fuck it, I'm going for it.
Well,
you
really what the fuck, go for it anyway. Remember that old saying?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and so, the fact that you've only done whatever your actual practice of strumming, guitaring is, your 10,000 hours that's got you to the stage has actually been all those other times where you've gone, okay, I'm scared, I'm on stage. And you've done 10,000 hours of that perhaps, and then you chuck a little bit of guitar in there, and the next thing you know, your guitar on stage. But you just go straight out. You're amazing.
Thank you, man.
I find it very entertaining, and I'm so glad you're on my team. It's very good.
Well, I just want more people to participate. I guess that's where I want to. I don't want people to be limited by a number before they go and do something. Like I had a client who couldn't run more than 50 meters. So I go, okay, that's your goal. You want to run more. She goes, I want to lose weight. And I'm like, I'm sick of this weight loss as a goal. That shouldn't be our primary goal. So I go, what's your skill that you're lacking in? She said, running. She goes, I can't run more than 50 meters. I go, there's a City to Surf coming up in 6 weeks. I'm booking you in. I'm paying for you to do it. You're in. And then in 6 weeks later, I didn't even have the opportunity to do it. I think I was injured, so I couldn't run with her. So she had to go and do it on her own. She completed it, 14.5 kilometers. So I think that if she didn't have something to work to, like that immediate goal or that like I'm not saying the outcome or why, like that holy shit moment, like you with your drumming, like that. I feel maybe that is the 10,000 hours that you're practicing, because I think that's maybe a skill that we're collectively as society we're not stimulating as much. We're letting fear dictate us, and instead of going out there and going, I'm scared, but I'm doing it, and I'm going to do it anyway.
I totally agree. Like, that's one of the things I'm really excited about with what I get to do for work, because my job is to analyze the person's past and identify the clear direction that all where they've spent their time, energy, focus, and money over their history is all leading in this one particular direction. And the thing is, they're going for someone to launch a business or to serve their purpose or to build a big profile and make a difference in the world, they're going to spend 10,000 hours doing something. So what I love getting to do is to help those people to choose that thing, because they are going to spend that 10,000 hours. And with regards to the why, if we can find within that direction a really big why, from a legacy perspective, or a contribution, or the purpose of being alive, or a reason to consume food and resources on Earth. This is what you're going to give back to the planet because you're consuming all this stuff, right? So, as far as the why is concerned, to get them to participate, I really like to help people to see that, this problem that you're trying to solve for the world is so big that you need to step back from an ego perspective and just participate, because the world needs you to do it. And stop thinking about, what are they going to think, and all those sorts of things, and just go for it. Because once people see that all of the elements of their history has led them to this point of authority where they really can make a difference to the world, once they see that, then it's very hard for them to unsee that. And it gives them a big why, and it also enables them to step aside from their ego and fear and maybe just do it and participate, as like you're saying. Because I know people who, and you guys, everyone knows people who firmly believe something needs to change. And they'll talk about it in the private space constantly, to a point where you're like, oh my God, I do not want to hang around that person anymore sometimes, because they're not participating in the solution. They're just whinging about it. And so it's really good can you guys see how that works? Like, if I show people with data and facts and words and evidence in their own past that says you actually do have the authority to be out there talking about this, and then participate.
Yeah.
Like you're saying.
And I don't want to come from a point of view of like ego as well by stating these things that I've done and put myself. I'm actually the opposite in terms of doing this. Like, I don't think I can do the marathon the whole time. When I entered into that marathon, when I'm doing the MMA fight, I'm like, I'm a bit of a phony doing this. Like, I'm going into an MMA fight in 4 weeks, and I'm like, I can't kick properly. And that's simultaneously,
that's participation, though, isn't it?
Exactly right. So that's what I mean. Like, as in, it's not like I have this thing inside me, like, fuck it, I'm gonna go do it. Excuse the swearing if it's on your Facebook page and it's G-rated, but fuck it, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna be the best person at this. It's never like that. The process is like, holy shit, I've got to wake up tomorrow morning at 4:30 in the morning and work on it the best I possibly can, because when it comes 5th of July, I'm fighting. Like, I'm a real person. So I've got to get up every day. I've got to honor my word. I've got to wake up. I've got to work on those kicks. Yes, my kicks are terrible. And what have I got to do to improve? Because July 5th, I've got to use them. It's not working on a skill that I'm not going to be using, like pick the running or boxing or anything else, like a goal, and having that, pushing that boundary and pushing that comfort zone on a day-to-day basis with the intention of that overall goal is it's more humbling than it is like coming from a point of ego, I guess.
I think there's a couple of ingredients to add to that, both of what you're sharing. And it comes back to agreements, right? So this participation thing can have an adverse effect. So if I choose to participate in a moment in a life, or I go for it, MMA, and then I get severely injured, or I have an experience that isn't great, because I push, like, I get up on stage, I'm playing the drums, and then actually the whole crowd starts booing, and I'm like, wow, that's crushed me. So there's a couple of ingredients that go around this participation thing, which is the ability to respond in the moment and recognise that to back myself in that participation. Because there's what's frightening about playing a gig. This is the reference I use because I went through that process, right? But what's frightening about playing in a band is that there's an audience that's judging that experience, and it's live. It's very much happening right there and then. And if I haven't trained or haven't the skills to handle that, so that for the positive, so that I can see the benefit in participation, then I may not participate anymore, right? This is why we've got to be careful to judge about people not participating or participating, because actually I need to condition myself ready for it. That's what keeping my agreements is about. That's the funny thing, is that our pre-conversation to this actually feeds into it. Because if I have trust in myself by keeping a really simple agreement, and I begin to observe in my life, I keep my agreement more and more with different people, then I'm more willing to participate, whatever that might be. And I'm likely to handle whatever that moment of participation is with a certain degree of observation and capability to go, well, I should do this again.
Objectivity.
Yeah.
An objective perspective.
So if I'm not trained...
critical.
Yeah, that's right. And if I'm not trained with those tools, then participation could be really frightening, really deadly. So I think it's really important to acknowledge... See, a lot of what you're sharing, a lot of what Stacey's sharing is that we have the training and the tools to see that it's worth participating. I think some people don't have that. They don't know, they can't see the value in it.
But their comfort zone is different. Like I have some guys in my coaching group that just go into the gym and training next to a guy who's, 100 kilos and they look jacked, is really outside their comfort zone. Just to participate in that element is just enough for them. They get the same feeling of just training someone next to someone like that who's doing 150 kilo bench and they're just doing 50 kilos is way outside their comfort zone. So that's just the same element as what I'm feeling when I'm doing an MMA fight. It's just different, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's subjective more than anything.
That's right. And by exploring it internally, on my own journey, I discover what my comfort zone is. So it's different for everyone. And it's funny because so it's interesting too, because physical training is very tangible, the tangible outcomes. People might have real strength and courage and more significant participation in other areas of their life where it's not as tangible, and it's hard to define for that. It's like Stacey would explore with people in their past. You might pull out, and I've experienced this with you, where we've got a mutual friend of ours, and she was struggling she was really emotional in defining what her role was in life, and Stacey said, "You're a mother. You've got such value out of parenting, and look at the leadership you can exhibit as a result of that." And she certainly was a very powerful person. She just couldn't see it for herself. And it was like, that's that in our society that we don't give necessarily structure around how valuable that role of being a mother is. Bringing a child up, and she had difficult circumstances. And and yet there it was on the table. It's really clear, actually, the moment it was pulled out of her, that she could do something with her life. She had tremendous capability. She just had to see it. And then suddenly it's like it opened up for her that she could do so much because she hadn't seen that's in fact what she put energy into.
I'm going to call her today. Thank you.
Yeah.
Interesting. To wrap that one up then, do you have any final thoughts on it?
10,000 hours. Yeah, if you... we have 29,000 days in our lives. We have 715,000 hours to spend. That's if you're going to live to around 83 years old. So you can be a genius in many things. And that's the 10,000 hours is the genius thing, isn't it? Yeah. So choose wisely. Choose with the objective of joy and service in mind would be my suggestion. Have a fun life, because when you're having a fun life, you can help a lot of people. And to be fun, actually, to have a fun life, I think agreements are part of that. Learning how my brain works, learning the dialogue inside that's going to beat me down or lift me up as per my instructions. That's profound, man. People could really comprehend that. You choose how happy you are by which thoughts you listen to. Oh, how do you learn which thoughts you listen to? Do agreements and have accountability. I really believe that's the key.
Mm.
So that's an interesting segue into the next thing on the list, the third and final. What it means to be happy. So that's interesting. What it means to be happy or what it takes to be happy?
I think, yeah, this was my question.
I think
You selected the word means, what it means to be happy?
Yeah, that's what I said. And
What
I
it
didn't
means-
necessarily think about it, so maybe it's...
What it means to be happy. Well, I can speak from what it means to be happy for me. I do have a very happy life. I'm a very happy person. And I think I just kind of embodied it in the previous sentence, actually. What it means to be happy is that I have an abundance of energy to share, you know, and because I've been happy for quite a while, so I've had that energy and I've put it into my own systems to a point where my life is very systemized and quite freeing. So therefore, for me, what it means to be happy, it's an interesting use of words. What it means to be happy for me is that I am in a place to be able to help others be happy. Then when I'm and there are, look, absolutely straight up about this. There are times like last year, there were months where I was so unproductive. I didn't care. I needed to nurture me, and I turned all my stuff off. I didn't connect. I didn't grow my business at all. I was totally okay with that because I wasn't in the right space to share. And I'm one of those few. I don't know how many coaches have the freedom to do this out there on the internet, but if I'm not feeling good, I am fucking trying to sell you my time. But when I'm pumped, when I've got shit going on, and when my stuff is working good, when my life's rocking, I will sell my time, and I will have no issue selling my time. But when I'm not doing my life properly, I'm not for sale. Because I ain't going to share that energy. And I don't know if anyone else is in such a privileged position to be able to stop their company when they don't feel right. And I am. And I fucking love that. It means so much to me. And if people could really appreciate that about the way I work, I think I would like to see what that would do. I really can stop. I can stop. I don't have to do what I do. But I do it because I love sharing it. When I have an abundance, the one problem that I've had, and I've said this so many times to people in my life over the years, I have been so incredibly happy, ridiculously abundant, constantly for days and weeks on end, just being so grateful. And the biggest problem I have is that I can't stick it in a bottle and give it to my friends and family because I have so much. I have so much. So subsequently, I have to package it, and I tried for years to give it away, but people don't appreciate it when it's given away, unless it's given away in a certain very selective type of way. And so then you have to sell it. And then for me to be able to sell it, I have to do marketing. But I don't want to do marketing because marketing brings me down from that energy that makes me feel so good that I want to give it away. So now I'm fortunate that I've got people helping me with marketing. Does that make sense? So what it means to be happy for me is to acknowledge when I'm up and to share it. And to also be okay with being down and to call in for help when I need it.
I want to share something about Stacey too, because I met Stacey, the first time we met was during the Waking Up Weekend in 2005, I think it was.
Correct.
And it's interesting because the space that you're in now is something that you've worked on, which is, funnily enough, connected to the two previous topics around 10,000 hours and agreements. You know, it's funny because happiness, this is what I wanted to raise the question, is that I think, when I first met you to where you are now, it's like a completely different person. And the amount of hours you put into yourself and into what you do, it's like practice. And that's one of the things that, again, what's so great about our community and our friendships is that I get to see progress in someone. That reinforces why I continue to work on myself, like keeping my agreements, work on, being the best version of myself. And yes, I will slip back down, and yes, there will be periods where I'm not particularly great, and it's just part of the human experience. Every now and then, someone comes into my life and reminds me, oh, look at them, look at the journey they've been on from where they've been to where they are now. And it's emotional. It's typically what I'm talking about is an emotional stability and sense of the way that Stacey communicates about himself now versus when I first met him. And this is the case with quite a few of our friends. So I just wanted to share that. I feel like you've really worked on that to get to a place where it comes naturally.
I've only ever seen him happy. His ball of energy.
Yeah.
Always. But yeah,
It's because you bring that out of me because that's our relationship. Mind you, I'm pretty much always like that.
Yeah.
Well, actually, so it's interesting that you will see me when I'm like that. And when I'm not like that, I'm I'll close myself off, and I have no problem. I'm not down. I'm not sad. I just know that I'm working on my own stuff, and when I'm working on my own stuff, that's when other people need to, find somebody else. To be honest. So anyway, yeah, I won't invite you over to my house for dinner, Liam, when I'm not rocking it, because and when things are good, when my money graph is good, when my physical stuff is my health and wellness, when my relationships, when my environment, when my company is good, all those sorts of things. Man, there's unlimited dinners in my house. And I think everybody's like that, and I think that's one of the big issues we have with social media is they only, and it's totally okay, and which is why I was talking to you in the foyer. Sometimes I don't want to. Sometimes I'm not interested. I don't even want more clients. I don't want to sell my time. I want to just sit down and watch fucking pyramid documentaries. And there's times when I can do that for months. And when I'm up and when I'm high, yes, that's when I'm going to post on social. That's when I'm going to have friends over. That's when I'm going to throw a party. And I think it's really important that people really, I know it's logical and it's a little bit talked about and it's somewhat obvious, but people really need to understand that that's what social media is. It is only the good stuff. And so there's people out there that, there was a point where I stopped doing Facebook videos. I used to do videos 3 or 4 times a week, every week, nonstop for years. Then I had a couple of people saying, what really hurts me when you say how good your life is, because my life's shit. And I hate watching your videos. Why do you keep putting those videos up? And I reflected on that. I was like, fuck, really? Am I actually bumming people out? Like, sorry, I actually had no intention of doing that. And that was years ago, and I pretty much stopped, which is crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. And 2 people, and I used to get thousands of views. I used to get comments crazy. I had people knocking on my door all the time, which I actually was like, oh my God, get it. So, seriously. So, that's where I'm at now. But yeah, that's what takes me happy. Well, so I went on a big
No,
segue.
it's good. I think what's interesting is something you talked about there is the idea of cycles too. So Instagram presents this idea of constant happiness or constant presentation of happiness, and it's material as well. What's interesting is that one of the things I notice about what it means to be happy is that there are periods where I'm not happy. I've gone through stages of not feeling so great. I don't want to call it depression. I don't want to necessarily give it a label. And there have been periods where I just don't feel particularly great. I'm not contributing very well to my relationship or relationships. I'm not particularly great at my job, and it's small. Again, it's small. I'm reflecting with my own internal standards. It's not someone giving me that information and or sharing that necessarily. It's just I know that that's what's going on. And it's interesting because it's part of a cycle, and I'm learning now to accept that those cycles exist. That just comes in and it comes out. So one of the things what I'm really enjoying is if I'm feeling really good about myself and I'm in a happy space, to really be present in that space, like practice that, because actually that's the thing to really enjoy. And I'm, being present in the space where I'm not great is also of service and useful. It's just I don't want to waste those happy moments and go, wow, this is a real blessing. So I'm finding now I'm really focusing on family and really beautiful relationships that I've developed and created over the years, or instant moments as well, where I love being in those moments with people and just recognizing the simplicity of the moment and reflecting on what and how that to me is happiness.
It's actually pretty similar. I was going to share a story exactly the same as what I was going through a couple of years ago, because obviously we're talking about these goals that we've all achieved, and doing the marathon, doing the world records, doing all these different goals. I don't know if it's addicted to having that set a big task and then achieving that big task. And then I had to get pulled into, when I was working at the Rabbitohs, I had to get pulled into the office by the coach. And he asked me the question, he goes, are you happy? I go, no, I don't know why, but I'm not. He goes, and he works in a Catholic school, and he talked to one of the brothers there, because he was feeling the same thing. He's got this high energy, addicted to having those goals set in task and just going for it, working at the Rabbitohs as a head coach. And he said, this is the time to start focusing on the mundaneness of life and appreciating the mundaneness of life, instead of always having to be happy to set a goal so big above and beyond yourself and then only be happy when you're achieving it. Having a coffee, going to the cafe, doing those, as you mentioned, those simple tasks to get back to everyday life, to make sure that you're continuing on a smaller day-to-day basis to be happy. And then also it's touching on what you were saying as well, like it's seeing both sides of the coin. In order to know how I'm happy, well, you've got to have times of unhappiness to realize what happiness is.
Yeah.
So,
and when I'm down, I don't get down about being down.
No.
Just sort of
You know what I mean? I'm like, oh yeah, it's okay. Like, I mean, I'm extremely fortunate in the sense that if I feel down, I can just stay in bed, you know, or I can just don't do whatever I want really. So I'm pretty lucky in that respect. But I also am okay with feeling bad. Well, not even bad. It's just like I can't be fucked today, and that's the way it is.
Yeah.
My batting average is great, and I back that. I know that. I know that on average, I'm rocking it. And so if today's not the day, then whatever.
They're having a flat day. Yeah. And then what I love about before I received the information, I always thought if I have a down day, that's who I am. It's like now if I have some time feeling down, it's like, no, I'm going to give myself this time. And in 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever time I give myself, I'm going to snap out of it.
You know what I like about what you share as well, because you know you've done 2 world records where essentially you gathered the biggest number of people to do push-ups for X amount of time, or burpees, and
boxing.
You know, you went and you started a podcast, like live streaming business with you. One of the things you talk about where you're going off and doing all these things, and you got pulled into the coach's office and had that chat. That participation means that you've gone and achieved things that I've met people who are still talking about things, for years and years and years. You've gone and done it. And by putting it in the bank, you can go, you know what? It wasn't necessarily the doing the thing that makes me happy. However, by exploring it, by going out and doing it, I've discovered that. Like I have something to reflect upon. And I think that goes back to this participation and how important that is. So another sort of anecdotal kind of sharing of a story is Claire, my wife. So we started out in theatre, and then in a very, very short career span, she ended up as an international associate producer on the musical Priscilla, the musical, which she took from here in Australia and toured here as the production coordinator. She took it to London and America. So she was about 27 when she wrapped up that role, and the last thing she did was bring it to New York as part of the producing team. And so she, like I said, her role was associate producer, and we talked about that, and we continue to talk about that. But in a very short amount of time, she reached one of the, like in terms of her trajectory in theatre, where she was a stage manager, started out in sort of back of house roles. She got to a very significant position and got a taste, or got to see, as pretty much as far as you can go in that theatre realm. And one of the things she discovered was she didn't necessarily want to do that anymore. Except the only way she could reflect on that is because she did it. She got to a place of doing it, and got to a place early enough to recognise, I can see it, I love it, but actually I don't want to keep doing that. And I've got friends who are still in the theatre space who are still progressing their way up to that role, working their way up, and have been in the game much longer. I'm not saying we're like Claire's better or worse or what have you. It just happened that she got an expedited opportunity to get there. But what's interesting is that suddenly that wasn't the goal for us anymore, because we're like, actually it's kind of not really what we want to do, and because we participated, we got there and we kind of observed it, responded, and then made adjustments accordingly. So we do think she does things differently now. She's in marketing and strategy. So I think that it's important to push myself. Like I learned to play the drums, to go back to that story, to discover what it takes to learn to play drums. I now have that in the bank, and it applies to so many other things in my life from participating. Yeah. And I think that helps me to understand the mundane and understand those spaces, because I can actually look back and go, well, I've done quite a bit already. I'm pretty happy with some of the things I've done. I'm just going to enjoy this space for a while.
Yeah. One more thing. When talking about Claire and doing the drums and going through this process of, setting a task and then realizing when you're at that level, it's like, I don't want to do that anymore. How do you know when to quit then? Because we've received this information, we know how to do our life the best we possibly can, but how do we know when to quit?
Well, I think it ties together with happiness. I think in her instance, she'd known, she'd explored it and pushed it as hard as she could, and she had the accolades. We were there at opening night in New York, and in terms of theatre, that's as good as you can get from an Australian theatre practitioner. It's your show opening in New York, in the not West. Is it? No, West End is London, but you
Broadway.
made it. Broadway, that's it. And that's we looked at each other and went, "Are you happy?" Going back like the Rabbitohs coach, are you happy? And I think Claire and I were like, "Well, I don't think we are happy with this. I think we need to change." So it has to do. Maybe to answer your question, which is complex and kind of big picture, so you can only answer it so much. But I think it has a lot to do with if I've pushed as hard as I could and explored all options in that opportunity in that space, then I get to a place where I think I've really done this for a while now. I think I'm not happy anymore. Then that I think is a good clue. If I haven't pushed myself hard enough and I just want to quit, because it's difficult and I'm in my comfort zone, that's a different problem. So I think it's worth overcoming that and testing this as long as I need to in order to discover whether I want to do it or not. So I think and that's dynamic. It's dependent on the person. That's their journey to work that out. But I don't think there's any prescription for that. But I think there's a difference between quitting versus getting to a place where I've really pushed it to the nth degree here. I've done everything possible here. Like I can understand a rugby star gets to the age of 28 and goes, "I'm ready to retire." They've done it. They might be at a different age to someone else retiring, but they've done it and they can see it. They've left everything on that wonderful saying, they've left everything out on the field. I think that's where to come from when moving on to the next stage versus being a spoiled brat sports star who's had everything and then deciding to quit because they're not getting it their way. Maybe.
Oh, they got dropped or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. They got it. Yeah, that's right. They were encouraged to perform harder, and they went, "Oh, F you, I'm out."
That's
when to quit. I think when it becomes boring, when it doesn't fire me up, when it becomes work that if I can't delegate it. If I still believe in it, then I should delegate it. If I can't delegate it, then I find something else. And I think, Brian Tracy, one of my favorite gurus of personal development, said happiness is the pursuit of a worthy goal. There's so many words in there. Happiness is the pursuit, not the attainment of a worthy goal. So each person has to really dig into who they are and what they care about, what's their values, what's their vision, what's their legacy potentially going to be, and the pursuit of it. And if that's just nice little step, happiness is the pursuit of a worthy goal, and I find that that works for me. And if I'm not, I'm really clear on what I want in my future. I'm really clear on my, my vision for the company and my vision for my own legacy and my personal life and so on. And if I'm not working towards that, if I'm not doing my life in a way that enables me to make progressive steps in that direction, then that's when I'm at risk of going into one of those funks. And I know that I know exactly how to stay out of that, which is the progressive realization of that worthy goal, and not just wanting it, but doing it. So for me, one thing per day is one of the things that's gotten me to where I am, and that's been a big thing for me. I don't know where I picked it up, but I think it was about 15 years ago. One thing per day, and that could be send an email, make a phone call. It could be do a mind map. It could be collect a photo. It could be whatever it might be, but something towards that big major stuff. Not just doing the dishes and washing my socks and, chilling with friends and doing my job or whatever it might be, but actually that pursuit, deliberate pursuit, one step.
And what about the continuously asking myself that question as well? Because what it means to be happy. What does it mean for me to be today happy?
I don't know that, or I would say, maybe to finish on that thought, I don't know that that's important. Just acknowledge when I am happy and just observe it and go, oh, that's interesting, okay. Because if I keep asking, it's like I have to manufacture it. That's fine. I don't think we need to do that. I acknowledge the one thing it's really difficult to do as a very privileged Australian who lives in a very glorious, gorgeous country, and the worst that we have is politics that annoy me.
Story for a different day.
I have to really focus on being happy because some people really don't have that luxury. So, I'm blessed. And that's very difficult to recognise and act upon instead of being a selfish brat.
Yeah.
Well, that's where that abundance, that obligation, I have an obligation to serve because I'm aware of that. I'm so grateful. I'm so aware that I have, compared to where I came from, like my childhood wasn't that fancy and not many other people in my world in those days have created much of what I've created. So I'm super grateful. And I think I just want to finish off as well on this. All of these subjects are all the same, really. How you said to acknowledge when I'm happy. And that brings me to just acknowledging emotions in general and to be on top of my emotions, which is part of it. And I think, I've done some pretty deep exploration stuff, and I believe that we are some kind of spiritual entity having a human experience. And I think those so-called negative sides, or the downtime and like heartbreak and regret and sadness, are just as beautiful if you can see them as an energetic event happening in my physical body. Now that, I think, is probably quite hard for a lot of people to maybe understand, and certainly to actually experience. But for me, like in the last year, I've been through some pretty, what would otherwise be considered, poor me sort of scenarios where, serious heartbreak and stuff like that, where I actually, and I don't know if it's some broken brain thing of mine, but I actually just, I tap in and I feel like, oh, wow, what an amazing sensation. What a super strong and detailed fucking thing happening in my body. It's not happening to me. It's an emotional experience. Emotion, energy in motion. It's just an electrical thing going on in my stomach or in my heart or in my lower back or wherever it's feeling. And that's part of, like, being happy is I don't know. It's just one of those things. And they're all great.
Mm.
Yeah. I hope I can maintain that perspective on things, because that's how I am.
Mm.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thanks for today.
Thank you. That's an hour.
Perfect.
Just on an hour. Talk about being on time. Thank you so much for your time, boys. It's been an absolute privilege, and it's been something that I've been visualizing for a long time. Actually, how I visioned it was separate, and I'm glad that it came together like this.
No, I'd do this again.
For sure.
Should do this regularly.
Yeah.
Well, let's put someone in the hot seat.
Yeah.
Us three grilling
Oh,
someone who
wow.
doesn't get our lingo. That would be deadly. Hang on, what did you just say? I think you said this. Is that what you actually
Is that what you
meant?
meant? Thank you so much for your time, boys. It's been a privilege.
Thanks, mate.